Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs will come to order. We have a quorum present, so we'll enter into executive session to conduct committee business. Today we'll mark up two pieces of bipartisan legislation. S-1271, the Fend Off Fentanyl Act, an original bill offered by Ranking Member Scott and me, the Recovering Executive Compensation Obtained from Unaccountable Practices, the RECOUP Act. These bipartisan bills we'll consider today will make our communities safer by helping stop the flow of dangerous fentanyl into our neighborhoods, and will make our economy fairer by holding bank executives accountable for their failures. Both bills are collaborations. Ranking Member Scott and I have taken feedback and ideas from members on and off this committee. We talk, we listen, we negotiate in good faith with each other on both bills. I particularly thank his staff and my extraordinary staff, not that his isn't extraordinary too, but I know mine better, for their work together. I want to thank all of our members. Literally every one of the members of this committee was involved. Committees come together to address one of the most significant crises of our time, the flood of dangerous illicit fentanyl that is taking thousands of lives and devastating communities in Ohio and South Carolina and around the country. Senator Scott and I listen to law enforcement and community leaders. We listen to advocates for Americans struggling with addiction. We work together to introduce the Fend Off Fentanyl Act. We've nearly every member of our committee and more than half of all senators as co-sponsors. We're in the cusp of 60 co-sponsors, half at each party. We have a broad outside coalition pushing for this bill, everyone from the American Association for the Treatment of Opioid Dependence to the National Sheriff's Association to the Fraternal Order of Police. It's an issue that hits home for each of us. In 2021, fentanyl was involved in 80% of Ohio's unintentional drug overdose deaths. I hold roundtables all over the state, and I know my colleagues do too in their states. I hear over and over from Ohioans from all walks of life that we need new, more powerful tools to prevent the flow of this awful, increasingly more potent drug into our communities. It's why our bill uses our economic arsenal to target the foreign fentanyl supply chain, from the Chinese chemical suppliers to the Mexican cartel distributors to the money launderers profiting off the illicit drug trade. I want to thank my colleagues for joining this bill and look forward to continuing working with all of you to get this signed into law. We'll also consider the RECOUP Act. This bill is part of the committee's response to the historic bank failures earlier this spring. Throughout the spring, we held hearings bringing before the committee the executives of these failed banks, the bank regulators, and experts on bank accountability. Republicans and Democrats alike agreed these executives failed at the basics of bank management, that they pushed an unsustainable business model because it increased short-term profits in their own compensation, that they ignored directives and warnings from regulators, that they took risky bets at the expense of their customers. They paid themselves bonuses right up until the moment the FDIC was forced to step in. American workers and their families should not be forced to pay the price for executives' risky bets that don't pay off, whether they're on Wall Street or whether they're in Silicon Valley. To most Americans, the lack of Wall Street accountability tracks with their entire experience with our economy. Workers face the consequences for bad decisions made in corporate headquarters. We know that. Executives who made these decisions too often ride off into the sunset with their bonuses and their stock options in tow. Americans will never forget that, by and large, the Wall Street executives who caused the 2008 financial crisis faced few consequences. Their profits, their bonuses were not clawed back. We will not let that happen again. Our bill with Senator Scott ensures that bank executives will face real accountability for gambling with customers' money. The bill does several key things. It will strengthen regulators' ability to ban or remove executives who fail to appropriately oversee and manage their banks. It will provide the FDIC authority to claw back compensation of failed bank executives, senior executives. It will increase and strengthen penalties against bad actors. It will require banks to adopt corporate governance and accountability standards that promote responsible management. Bank executives who take on too much risk and crash their banks shouldn't get to land on their feet. They shouldn't get to keep the profits they made by making bad bets with other people's money. They shouldn't get to take their bad behavior to another bank. I want to thank the members on and off this committee who introduced different bipartisan bills to address this problem. I thank Senator Warren and her co-sponsors. I thank Senator Reid and his co-sponsors. With bipartisan support on each bill, their work helped generate ideas build momentum for action and advance these efforts. I want to thank Senator Scott and his staff for working with my staff and me. We have bipartisan agreement on a comprehensive bill that cracks down on irresponsible executives who poorly manage their banks, who put customers and workers and the entire economy at risk. That tells me the ranking member and I have threaded the needle pretty well.